Hey guys, thought I would jump in here and let you guys know what's going on with the overall severe weather threat. Hanging out at the home office here, so I'm about 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from heading in. I'm not going to have time to do this probably this afternoon, so I thought I'd jump in here real quick and let you guys know kind of what's going on with the overall threat for severe weather. On top of that, and this kind of gives me an opportunity to preview things before I really dive into the nuts and bolts when I get into work. I'm not going to go through a lot of what I tend to do when I get into work, but I'm going to try my best to at least walk you guys through kind of what we're looking at here. So I got some new software, so I'm trying my best to figure out exactly how to use it. So yeah, there's what you saw a little bit earlier, just kind of like looking outside at what's going on. We got some broken clouds. It looks like the sun's trying to peek through in a couple of different places, kind of here and there across the area. I still think South Mississippi gets up to around 80. I think that probably parts of Louisiana get up into at least the mid to upper 70s, and probably around 80 over into parts of Texas. And that's out ahead of a front where we're going to see the possibility of some severe weather. And by the way, if you're watching this right now, you can kind of scroll down, and if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. But here's the setup right now. A slight risk for severe weather across parts of Texas, Louisiana, and sections of Mississippi. Now, recalling yesterday, they kind of dragged that thing off to the east a little bit. Now they've pushed it back off to the west. Still trying to get an idea about the timeline for how fast this front's going to move once it starts going. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of see in here slight marginal risk. The tornado threat is something that they're keeping a close eye on. A 5% risk for tornado across parts of East Texas and Louisiana, and in a kind of a sliver of kind of west central Mississippi. I wouldn't be surprised if this gets maybe upped a little bit. I don't know if we end up with a 10% risk in here, but as we'll see here in a second, there is going to be a place where the threat for tornadoes is probably just a touch higher. A wind threat in there, and the hail threat's a little bit lower. You can see the wind threat kind of lingers into parts of Mississippi. The hail threat, not necessarily. I think most of the hail is going to be back off to kind of the west. So for tomorrow, a slight risk is then in place for parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And let's see here. And this we only get probabilistic at this point, which is a 5 and 15% risk for severe weather, which kind of lines up with their 4 to 8 day thing, which showed up just a couple of days ago. But again, so that's from the SPC. We've got today. Let's go back to the categorical. Today and tomorrow. Today, tomorrow. You can see that the threat just kind of shifts off to the east. But what does it look like? Well, it looks like we're actually going to get a fair amount of rain across parts of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Unfortunately, places that don't need any more water on the ground. Right now, I believe there are over 40 river gauges that are still in some semblance of flood stage across Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi. And as it looks like right now, you guys are slated to get even more rain. We can kind of run this back. I'm going to turn the reflectivity on, and we're going to kind of run this forward in time. You can see that, for the most part, as we head through the day today, nothing really sharpens up until we get toward about 2 or 3 this afternoon, and that's when things really get moving finally. But even once they make it so far, they kind of just stall out, and then it keeps raining. And one thing that, at least in South Mississippi, we're going to have to watch that first round as it slides through. This is about 6, 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. And just how far south does the cold pool get in here? And again, on this leading edge right in there, how far south does that make it before it lifts back to the north? And if it does lift back to the north, what does that look like right to the south of that? And that's going to be where the severe weather across Mississippi is. For Arkansas and Louisiana, your severe weather is going to be this afternoon, and I think mainly it's going to be across parts of central Arkansas in this main push that goes all the way across the state in the better part of about 3 or 4 hours this afternoon, just kind of back and forth, back and forth. And in it, there's going to be some damaging wind, probably some hail, and some isolated tornadoes, a tornado or two kind of here and there. And they may be associated with some of the Boeing segments. I know the SPC was a little concerned about that overnight last night and into early this morning. For the folks in Texas, you guys are going to get probably more of the discrete supercells for today with big hail and the possibility of a tornado or two as well. But I would argue that the main tornado threat is probably going to be for parts of Louisiana. And let's actually change this view over, and we'll include Texas in here. And here's just your updraft helicity. So basically, is your updraft spinning? And the model just kind of making an estimation based on all the parameters. Is the updraft going to be rotating? And notice that you do have some in here across parts of Texas. Anywhere you get that gray shading, that's some updraft helicity. But it's when you start to get into the colors in here across parts of East Texas that you start to talk about the opportunity for tornadic development. It doesn't guarantee a tornado, but it does mean that you have a better chance of getting into one. So that starts across parts of Texas, but notice that it just kind of hangs in all the way across Louisiana, and then it kind of fizzles out. And then for parts of Mississippi, I can kind of slide up here. Then for parts of Mississippi, as we head through the morning hours, and this is where how far south that cold pool makes it starts to matter. The further south it gets, the further south the updraft helicity values are going to be, and thus the tornado threat is going to be. The hope is that pushes all the way south and into the Gulf of Mexico. It cuts off the threat for tornadoes until you get into the Gulf, and then you just hope that people aren't out there on boats and stuff. But it would at least save all of us on land from having to deal with this. But that's just one little piece of the puzzle. We can go look at the NAM 3K. We can go, instead of looking at Run Max, I'm actually going to look at Run Max, and this is what we're going to do here, is look at the updraft helicity tracks. So where does the storm start, and as it tracks along, how long does it survive? Where are those tracks? And you can kind of see where we anticipate probably the roughest weather today, from parts of East Texas through parts of Louisiana. And then as we move forward in time, that does spread across parts of the rest of Louisiana and South Mississippi and into parts of Alabama. Right now it looks like Arkansas is going to be spared from the severe weather, but they are going to have to deal with a fair amount of rain. In fact, let's do the precipitation. We can look at the total amount of precip that is anticipated to fall, and man, oh man, that's a lot of water. We're talking about anywhere from 4 to 5, maybe even 6 inches across parts of Louisiana, and then across parts of Arkansas, somewhere between 1 to 2 inches. Northern Mississippi, 3-4 inches, and into parts of Tennessee as well. Parts of Texas getting in on kind of that 3 to 6 inch range. Down across parts of South Mississippi and Alabama, not quite as much, maybe a ½ inch to 1.5 inches. Thankfully, we are going to be spared across parts of South Mississippi. Going back to that updraft helicity really quickly, this is just another model basically looking at the same thing, showing a decent swath from Texas through Louisiana, and that actually holds into parts of northern Mississippi as we head through the overnight hours tonight. And one thing that I'm kind of keeping a close eye on is the wind gusts. I'm not too concerned about the tornado threat, I don't think, for northern Mississippi, at least as of right now. But the wind threat, you get some of these rotating updrafts and you get some of these rotating thunderstorms that kind of hold together. Once they decide that they're done, okay, I lived a good life, I'm ready to go. Well, everything that it's been holding up for all that time has to go somewhere. It's just going to fall right back down to the surface. It's going to hit the ground and start running. And that's when you get some pretty decent wind gusts. And they may not be even to severe limits, but you're going to end up with wind gusts nonetheless. So if you've got family or friends across parts of northern Mississippi, and you got lawn furniture out and everything, it's starting to get into spring, you may want to bring that in today. Because I think as we head through overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning, at least for northern Mississippi, they may be dealing with some gusty wind associated with some of these thunderstorms. Then things kind of reload for Thursday. And this is what I was talking about, that cold pool. It depends on how far south it makes it during the morning hours. This one shows it only making it to about Highway 98. So south of 98 would have to deal with the more robust updraft helicity, and thus the bigger threat for tornadoes. But we had a couple models runs yesterday that had it hang up at I-20. Then we had a couple that made it all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's one thing worth watching as well. And then as we head through the afternoon, everything transitions into parts of Alabama. Real quickly, just for the next couple of hours, I wanted to point out, so if you've got friends or family and people that are moving around, I'm going to go over to the SIG tours here. And you're always looking for kind of the sharpest gradient with these. So this is 4 and 6 hours out, 4 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. And it doesn't like to stay there, so I can't really highlight things other than to tell you, because the second I mouse off of it, it resets. But I gotta say that near Alexandria, and then just off to the north of Alexandria, and up toward like Shreveport and out toward Vicksburg, you know, right along that gradient between the little 3 circle, the 2 circle, and then the 1 circle in red there, is the places that that we're going to be watching for the greatest threat, I think, for the bigger hail, and unfortunately the threat for tornadoes as well. So yes, the whole area, and again, we can go back to the Storm Prediction Center, the whole 5% risk area in here that you see, let's highlight that, the whole 5% risk area, yes, but I would argue that there's probably a slightly greater risk kind of right in there. Something I was trying to highlight last night. I don't think I did a very good job on TV kind of highlighting that, but that was the area that I was most concerned about last night, and I still am today, for the development of tornadoes. And then there's probably a second area, which is back here across parts of Texas, strictly because it's Texas. And you know, everybody laughs, oh, everything's bigger in Texas, and it's true, the storms included. But I would say there's probably a little secondary area while these things are still discrete, and that just means that they're away. There's one storm here, one storm there, and another storm over there, and they're not a big line of showers and storms. It's going to be a line, I think, by the time it gets into Louisiana, and then you're going to have embedded supercells, not discrete supercells. And so I think when they're discrete across parts of Texas, they're going to have one threat, and then when they're embedded in Louisiana, you're going to have another threat. I would argue as this transitions overnight into Thursday, they'll probably keep that 5% risk south of 98, maybe a 2% risk up to I-20. So, and if you don't know where those are, you know, for South Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana, that would be kind of the boot of Louisiana, you know, within 100 miles of the Gulf of Mexico for Mississippi and Alabama, roughly, for that 5% risk. So that's one thing that we're keeping a close eye on down here. And again, I'm headed back to work here, and heading back into the station here shortly. So we'll have an update come later this afternoon. If you've got the WDAM app, I'll probably be pushing stuff out on that as we head through the afternoon. So if you don't have it, download it. Here, hold on. It'll probably do a number to help you out. And again, that's this guy right there. See if I can anti-glare it. Anyway, you're gonna want to download it because there's little videos that are at the top of the screen there that we kick out, you know, 2 or 3 every afternoon and evening to kind of help you guys out in terms of the overall threat for severe weather. But anyway, that's the update for now. And I'll see you guys a little bit later.